The latest NBA.com power rankings are officially out, and we're going to take a look at them. I hope you guys enjoy. Make sure you subscribe here to the Basketball Bulletin for more content. Trevor and I cover all the teams in the league, and we definitely would love to have you guys stick around. Also, hit that thumbs up. The goal for today's video for likes is going to be 150. Post down below which team you think is the most surprising inclusion also as well. All right, so number one on this, speaking of surprising, is to nobody's surprise, the Cleveland Cavaliers. Starting 11 and nobody expected that. I thought they were good, but I didn't know they'd start 11 and 0 with the number one offense, ninth defense, second best net rating. They have been absolutely bludgeoning teams. In fact, just a few days ago, if I remember correctly, they just absolutely demolished the Warriors, which, the Warriors are also an extremely good team. They're going to be high on this power ranking too. So it just goes to show how awesome the Cavaliers have been to start this season. The best start in franchise history by a few games now. They are absolutely phenomenal. Some of that is because of the way that they're using Evan Mobley. But one thing that I did a video on this, if you want to see them covered more expressly in detail, I did a video on them a few days ago. One thing I noticed was that the Cavs have great production from most of the team, and they're playing most of their guys 28, 29, 30 minutes. They're not, putting like 35, 36 minutes on their guys. It's just great balance, right? Karis LeVert was coming in as of a few games ago. He had the second best net rating on their team behind Evan Mobley, I believe. And they just were awesome. So seeing them at 11 and 0, awesome mark here. So some of the notes here. The Cavs line up with Okoro as the fifth guy, was outscored by 11 points in less than 10 minutes against Brooklyn, but they've now outscored their opponents by basically 30 points per 100 possessions with Karis LeVert in those minutes. Like I said, LeVert plugging in has been huge for this team, with that being the highest on-court mark among 300 players who have averaged at least 10 minutes per game. Wow, LeVert has been awesome for this team. Garland has only had 20 points against the Nets as well. Did I say Nets? Having dropped 39, 27 in the last couple of games, but he was efficient in there as well. The Cavs were a league best 9-1 in rest advantage games last season, but have had just 2 rest advantages in their first 40 games of this season as well. Both of them Wednesday against Philadelphia and Sunday versus the Hornets are this week. Okay, so we'll see what happens in those games, but that's definitely pretty interesting. Speaking of the Warriors, I didn't realize they'd be number 2. Last week they were 5. I thought they'd be 3 or 4. Number 2. So I did kind of just say that they got kind of demolished, if I remember correctly, against the Cavs, but obviously don't quote me on that. But I mean, that doesn't matter. They're 8-2. They played a handful of games without Steph out there. Nobody expected them to be 8-2, but actually, I didn't expect them to be 8-2. But one thing I will say is I thought that they got pretty noticeably better after the offseason, and everyone kind of focused on losing Clay. And I think Clay is obviously still a great player. He's been, last time I checked anyway, pretty good for the Mavericks as well. But I think that the Warriors got more balance with the roster, adding in, the few guys that they did and having some internal growth. Buddy has been amazing, putting up 20 points per game in 20 minutes off the bench. That's obviously amazing. He fits the system pretty well. And the thing with Buddy is that Clay has slipped defensively with all the injuries and the age piling on. He's nowhere near what he used to be in his prime. That's not a knock on Clay or anything like that. But my point with that is that while Buddy is not a great defensive player, I don't know about his metrics on this team because they're third in defense overall. He probably has some good metrics this year. But historically, he hasn't been a great defensive player. He's probably the next best player to plug into a spot that, a team that used Clay the way that they used him, Buddy is like the next best approximation of a player you can find in the league. So that's why I thought there wasn't going to be a huge drop off. And again, I think that they're better overall. So pretty cool to see with the Warriors, especially because the thing with the Warriors is we did a video on them about a week ago, and it was like, okay, so they have had an easy season, but then they hit a stretch where it's like they're going to have some real tough games, right? Didn't they beat the Celtics the other day as well? They beat the Thunder as well. So they've had some tough games here, and I'm going to pull them up, and they've been able to kind of survive that, right? And like I said, they played a handful of games without Steph too. So that is huge for them. Yeah, see, look at this. They lost to the Cavs by 20 points. It's not as bad as I kind of made it sound, I guess. But, they 2 of these last 3 games have been against the best teams in the league, and they're 2-1. So that's pretty amazing, dude. So that's not much I can really say. Sorry if I'm falling over my words a bit today. They have been awesome. So moving on from them, the Thunder, they're down a spot from last week at number 1. They have the best defense and net rating in the league. The fun thing with the Thunder is that they're 14th in offense. The fun thing with the Thunder is that they just absolutely are killing teams when Chet is on the court. Trev did a video, and I watched that one earlier on this channel. So he covered how amazing they are with Chet on the court. But the problem is that they're losing Chet, but they have been throughout the season so far just crazy defensively, and then they plug in other guys out there like Alex Caruso, Lou Dort, these guys on their roster that are just amazing defensive players. So they've been really good off. Is Alex Caruso a solution? He was guarding Jokic for a bit on Wednesday when the Thunder picked up their first loss. I didn't even know that. When Caruso is down the stretch, on the court down the stretch, and had averaged 7.6 deflections per 36 minutes, the second in the league. But he's played just 20 minutes per game with 3 other guards and wings continuing to take turns as the team's 5th starter. All right, so moving on. Boston, 4th best net rating. So what I'm seeing here also is that for the first 3 teams, they were also like super high in pace, top 10 in pace, all 3 of them as well. So that's kind of what's like it. The only real number that's a little bit of an outlier is that the Thunder have the 14th offense, but I'm sure that's like a marginal difference. They're probably just only a couple points off of being top 10. But they've got the best defense. And who had number 2 on defense? Was it the Warriors? No, Warriors are 3. So we're going to find number 2 pretty soon here. But I'm curious as to see, without having to actually literally pull it up, who the second best defense is and what that margin is. Because they're at like 100 even, which is kind of crazy for the Thunder. Like that's actually kind of crazy. 100.3 is ridiculous. In today's day and age, that's kind of crazy. All right, Boston, though, back to the point. They are number 3 in offense, number 6 in defense. So last time I checked in on their statistics, they were about 14th in defense. So they have been able to get that number climbing. But, I mean, this isn't surprising. You kind of just expect this from Boston. You expect they're going to be one of the top 2 or so seeds in the East, maybe 3rd at worst, depending on how much they want to coast this year until they get into the playoffs, so they're going to turn it on for sure. But that's about what you'd expect. Right now, they're more interested in winning games along the way, yes, but they're trying to get their guys healthy, keep their guys healthy and make it through the regular season. But the last time I checked as well, they had Tatum and Brown both putting up, I believe, 28 points per game. Tatum was closer to 30. So really, really good production from their guys. But with Boston, with Cavs, with some of these teams, and also with the Warriors, I didn't really talk about it there too. It's just a beat you by committee thing. All these teams have their main guys not playing a ton of minutes. I need to look at the Thunder as well, because I don't know exactly how the Thunder look with their minute distribution, but I'd assume it's something along the same lines where it's just most of their guys getting about 30 minutes per game, 31 at most. Like, I'm pretty sure it's probably something similar. Let's see what we have here. Minutes per game. Yeah, see, this is what I'm talking about. Shea's getting 32, and that's the highest on the team. 33, basically, if you round up. So great distribution, winning by committee. Boston doing the same thing. Number 5 is Phoenix. They also are losing Kevin Durant, which is unfortunate because he has been playing like one of the best MVP candidates out there. I saw a stat that said KD has, I think 12 as of a few days ago. I think 12 clutch time shots and several clutch time blocks as well. And there was also a couple of clips circulating as well of him just playing amazing defense, basically guarding everybody on the team, switching, rotating, all this stuff. Maybe you've seen those as well floating around. So KD has been awesome on both sides of the court. And, I got to say, like on the defensive side, KD never really gets a ton of credit for the defensive player he can be. And I think that over the years, that's been pretty underrated for him. He gets talked more about as an offensive player, almost like people think he doesn't play any defense, I guess, but it's kind of weird, but he's been pretty awesome. See right here, 8 of the Suns' 10 games have been within 5 points in the last 5 minutes. Yeah, they've played some really tough, close games, and Durant is 12 for 19 on clutch shots with huge buckets coming against the Sixers and Heat last week. He's just 2 for 7 on the clutch threes, but one of those makes was a completely unbothered pull-up over an earnest contest from Daniel Gafford as the Suns got a big win against Dallas on Friday, and they're undefeated 7-0 in clutch games with Durant in uniform. Yeah, he has been winning them games down the stretch with his shot making. So this is a fun one. This is a really interesting one. The Nuggets climb 10 or 4 spots. You could make the argument that they should have been lower than 10 last time. I think that they had a couple of weeks here, a couple of rankings where they probably were given a little bit of credit. that they may or may not have deserved. It's not a huge deal. It doesn't really matter, but that's just my opinion. But this one's fun because they have been on a tear here. They're now at 7-3. I hate pulling up the team page here because it does everything I don't want it to do. I have to actually pull it up the right way from the NBA stats page to see what I want to see. So we're going to pull up the Nuggets. There was an easier way to do this live in the video than how I did it, but it's all right. We'll just sort these by teams because I don't know exactly where all these guys are. All right, so Denver, 7-3. One thing I wanted to see here is some of the advanced metrics for this team. It's kind of crazy. Plus minus Jokic, obviously. Murray's come back a couple of games now, I believe. So he's at 9 there. Braun 9. Gordon is at 7. Gordon is still out last time I checked. And Russ is second on the team in the negative. But what I will say is Russ had a few really good games to keep them in the hunt here. We're going to pull up also the player stats here as well. Overall for the season, this is something also I wanted to point out. Braun has been pretty good for them, giving them 16 points per game. The Nuggets are pretty top heavy, so they are relying a lot on their starting group. But Jokic playing 38 minutes per game, giving them 30 points, a 30-point triple-double on the season. Crazy. 30 points, 14 rebounds, 12 assists. I mean, damn. like, dude, that's ridiculous, right? 30, 14, and 12 with a block and nearly 2 steals. Nearly 2 steals. He's shooting 57 or 56% from threes right now. 56% from the field. Jesus, man. Jokic has been, so this is why I said this is a fun one. Jokic has been on a tear for this team recently. And I think that they've needed all of that from him because he has kept them in the hunt here. So for me, that is one of the most interesting things to see here with Jokic in the way that he has largely been putting up video game numbers for this team to win these games. And he's got them at a 7-3 record where they were, 1-3 or something like that, 3-3, I believe, in that area. And they were really struggling out the gate. I don't know if they've benefited from easier games recently. Maybe that's a thing as well. But still, regardless, the fact that they have been able to kind of climb back here is pretty crazy. So let's see the schedule, how it's looked recently. They just played Dallas, right? Yeah, they won Dallas by 2. Miami, they beat OKC by 2. So they've been having some really close games here in the last week versus some good teams. 1 by 2 against Toronto. Toronto is super feisty this year. So they're on a 5-game win streak here as well. And that makes a huge difference, especially early in the season. So that's pretty great for them. Next game is against the Pelicans. They've got 2 against Memphis here. Dallas, I wouldn't be surprised if they won 3 of these 4 games here. And then if you extend to the Lakers, that's another game that's a toss-up. I mean, I guess it kind of just depends how AD is looking, if AD's out there. Traditionally, the Lakers over the last few seasons haven't really been a good matchup. So if you go based off that, then just technically speaking, that should be a win for the Nuggets. But maybe they look a little better this time. I don't know. We'll see what the JJ system looks like in that matchup. Maybe it makes a difference. I'm not sure. But regardless, the Nuggets have been crazy. Jokic has been crazy. Russ had a few really good games for them. Strother and the other guys that they plugged in there have been really good for them. Also, again, remember, while they're doing this, Murray missed a few games. Gordon is out. And those are 2 of their best players. So it's pretty tough. So that's pretty awesome for them. The Timberwolves at 6-4, 8th defense, 8th offense. Nice. Good to see that. 6th in net rating. So on Thursday, the Wolves had the most efficient offensive game for any team since the Celtics blowout on opening night. So one thing I'll say about this team is it's kind of crazy the way that they have been trying to Ant has been really trying to punish teams for going under on him, which is pretty cool, actually. I like that a lot. We're going to pull up their players here. I like that a lot, but he's been putting up a lot of threes. And it's been working out overall, generally speaking. Teams shooting Okay. I want to see the shooting numbers for the Timberwolves here. So, distance shooting for the Timberwolves, they're taking 21 long shots and making 40% of them. Okay. I was curious about how many they're taking. The Celtics, my God. 35 is good Lord, man. Jeez, man. The Celtics are getting them up, dude. So anyway, long story short, yeah, the Timberwolves have been awesome. They have been absolutely just killing teams with that distance shooting. And then also the play of Ant. Julius, last time I checked, has had a number of good games for the team throughout the season. And that's been extremely helpful. I want to pull up his player stats here. Where's Jewel? There he is. Okay, so he's putting up 21 points per game. Yeah, 21, 7 and 5. Nikhil is a +8. He's leading the team in plus minus. DiVincenzo as well, next in the team in plus minus. I'd like to say, like, on the Julius thing, I think that the Gobert Julius fit has been pretty interesting because it's not been as bad as you would think. The spacing is kind of clunky, but it's been okay because Julius has been hitting his threes. He's shooting 40% on the season. Ant is taking 12 goddamn threes a game at 40-6%. So they've been able to kind of stem the tide with that. That's what I was saying about Ant punishing teams for going under on those screens. And I really like the playmaking piece from Julius. I think he's leading the team in assists as well right now. Get tied with Conley at 4.6. So basically leading the team in assists right now. So he's been fitting in pretty nicely. I always thought that it was a bit of a clunky fit, but I thought that the usage of him on ball would be one of the primary ways that they can make that work. And I wanted to see him in those pick and rolls and things like that. And they've been doing that. All right, let's move on to the next team here. Number 8 is the Grizzlies. They have had some really strong play from some of their guys, particularly the ex-Lakers. Scottie Pippen getting a triple-double the other day. Also, Jay Huff has been awesome for them. We're just waiting for Colin Castleton to get minutes and just absolutely just start killing out there for no damn reason. Ja's been good, but Ja got hurt. I don't know what's going on with him. We'll see what happens. Jaren Jackson's been good as well. I don't want to kind of spend too much time because we're already getting kind of a little bit long. So don't feel disrespected if I kind of shoot a little bit past these next couple of teams here. The Kings at number 9. So that's pretty great for them, seeing that they're rebounding now, 6-4 record. They started the season a little bit slower than you would expect. So that's good. Same deal for the Pacers. They're now at 500, 5-5, excuse me. No reason for them to have been as bad as they were to start the season. They just weren't getting out. They weren't running. They weren't defending. They weren't scoring. And these numbers are starting to normalize for them a bit. They're now 15th in pace, 11th in offense. I expect these numbers both to climb if last year was an indicator of what they should be right now. The Mavs down a couple of spots here, 4 spots from last week. They're now at 5-5. They went 2-3 on their longest homestand of the season, the beginning of a 3-game trip with a loss to Denver as well. So the Mavs, I'm not too worried about this. Yeah, you don't want to be 500, of course. I'm not too worried about this. I feel like Luka is still not fully into game shape. And you could maybe make a commentary about the fact that it feels like he kind of comes in like that, out of shape, or not fully in perfect shape. As I guess it, out of shape, right? It's kind of subjective. You can maybe make an argument as to whether or not that should change, or if that has changed, or if it's as bad as it has been the last couple of years. But regardless, Luka's still going to get his. It doesn't matter what shape he's in, really. He's going to get his points. But the Mavs, I think, can definitely be better than that. 5-5, but it's just more or less also, I'm not able to pull up every single team's schedule, right? Or strength of schedule. I guess I could have pulled that up. But really, truly what it is that you're going to see a lot of these teams that, like, for the Western Conference, they're in big ties. Last time I checked here at like 5-5 and 6-4. Like, see, look at this. This is a several 5-way team tie at 6-4 here. And there's just a lot of congestion here where these teams are just kind of in that area. And then the East, you have the third seed is a team at 500. The third seed. So that's just kind of it kind of is what it is with the West. Like, I think right now the West is maybe overperforming. They're really beating up on the East in these matchups. I'm sure that's what's happening here because these Eastern teams are really low. So Yeah, I'm sure that's what's happening. But yeah, my point is that like regardless, like 4-4, 6-4, 5-5, things like that, it's all relatively the same right now because all these teams are just in a huge tie. The problem is when you get late into the season and you're winning these games and you're not changing your standings. The Lakers had that, and they're our next team here. They had that happen a good bit to them last year, and they were in the 9 seed for like weeks, it felt like, and they were winning all of their games, right? They couldn't move because the West kind of is just really tough to move up in. And so I think later on it matters much more. But regardless, you want to start building separation if you can, similar to how, I mean, they're going crazy, but similar to how a couple of the East teams have done. The Lakers, 5th in offense, 26th in defense, which has them smack dab in the middle in net rating. It's crazy. 16th in pace. They went 1-4 on their road trip and are 5-0 at home. So that's kind of where they lost these games. So like the funny thing with the Lakers is that having watched all of their games start to finish, called some of their games, doing the Laker Nation stuff, you could have made an argument, and maybe the rest of the games don't play out the way that they did if this happened, but you could have made an argument that they could have lost their first few games to start the season. I'm not saying that they would be 3-7, right? Maybe the other games shake out a little bit differently. Maybe there's more urgency in the Detroit game or something like that they lost, right? So where, it evens out. But they definitely, my point with that was that they definitely had some really tight games, or they had like that game against the Kings where I thought they didn't really deserve to win that game, but LeBron went God mode and stole that game at the start of that fourth quarter, I believe. And, things kind of went their way, but then they were 4-0, right? They were 4-0, I believe, until they go on that road trip. No, 3-0. And then they go on the road trip, and then they go 1-4. And in those 4 games, there were games that they could have won or should have won, like the Detroit game. Not to take anything away from Detroit. They're young, they're scrappy, they've given teams hell. Up to that point, they had played one of the harder schedules as well. So they're better than you would think, is my point. But the Lakers just didn't bring the requisite physicality, the energy, things like that to really be in that matchup. So they're a weird team, again, which is why I mentioned with Denver, like I don't really know what to expect in that matchup because the team is just weird. They perform, it feels like, and LeBron said this himself, like this team could win against anyone or they could lose against anyone. I think that they really play up or down to competition. And I don't know if that's a LeBron thing because it takes a while. It probably is, to be honest. It takes a while for his engine to get revved up sometimes. He's also not fully motivated probably in some of these games where he feels like he can coast against some of these teams, which is understandable. And unfortunately, the team takes cues from that. Like their energy comes from him, which is unfortunate. He's the 40-year-old on the team. You wouldn't expect that to be the case. So, yeah, it is what it is with them. The Clippers, they are the exact opposite of the Lakers. Offense and defense is kind of funny. They're the 4th best defense, but that's not really surprising. They've got a lot of good defensive players over there. That's one of the things I talked about with them in the offseason. I really like the way that they adjusted that roster, adding a bunch of defensive wings and stuff like that, like Derek Jones, and the way that I thought that they would play this year. And that's pretty awesome. Harden has been pretty solid for them. Norman Powell, Zubac, these players have been great for them. The Knicks underperforming here, 30th in pace is kind of crazy. I don't know if they've got the 2nd best offense. They're just not defending anybody as well. I need to look at the strength of schedule as well. They might have had some really tough games here, but I don't know if 30th in pace is sustainable. I need to see their last year numbers on that specifically. So don't quote me on that. But yeah, that's definitely 500, below 500. I don't expect this to stick. I'll expect that to normalize around a top 4 seed in the East, but we'll see what their end record is, right? Only 3 Eastern Conference teams are 500 or better, and the Knicks aren't one of them, having lost 3 of their last 4 games. The Heat here at 4-5, number 16. I'm going to kind of just go rapid fire. The Magic at 17. The Nets at 18. The Bulls at 19 here, up from 20, so 1 spot up. 1st in pace. They're running and gunning. They're getting it up. The Hawks here at 20. 21 is the Spurs. 4-6, not terrible for them. That's about what you'd expect. But again, like I said, 4-6, 6-4, it's all so close right now that there's truly no separation, because if you go on like the Nuggets did, you go on a streak here, 2, 3, 4, 5 games, all of a sudden you're going to be in the top of the standings. So that's kind of how things are. And that's probably truly, that's how it's going to be all year with the West. All right, the Charlotte Hornets there, the Pistons, the Bucks, the Sixers are going to be down here too. Yep, there they both are, 24 and 25. Extremely disappointing, especially on the case of the Bucks. The Sixers have yet to have their best players, so I expect them to rebound in a meaningful way. But the Bucks, I don't really know what they can do. They've had several 40-piece games from their players. I believe Giannis has had 2, but I know for a fact he and Dame have each had 1 at least, and they're just not winning games. To be fair, though, the Dame game was against the Cavs. I think they lost both of those Cavs games by like 5 points or less. So it is what it is, right? The Raptors, the Blazers, the Pelicans. Oh, the Pelicans being down here. I got to see if they actually have their pick this year. I'd assume that they do, but if they do, I mean, it may be time to kind of hang it up. So this is like the opposite argument that being down early could kind of beat your butt in the West. Like you may not recover from this, particularly because you're losing Zion. You don't have Murray. They're getting back. I don't remember which player it was, but they're getting back one of their main players here. But I just don't know how you rebound from this in the Western Conference. Like this could very easily landslide on them. And then just be a problem where it's like, okay, we're midway through the season. We're 10, 12 games under 500. Let's just pack it in. Like, I don't really know what they do this year because Zion also got hurt. The Jazz at 29 and 30 is Washington. Yeah, so like most of these teams towards the bottom, aside from like the Pelicans, the Bucks, and the Sixers, pretty much all the teams between 23 and 30 are teams. So I guess there's 4 other teams. They're teams that should be tanking anyway, but there's 3 teams down there that are not trying to tank and haven't been trying to tank, and they're down there. So we'll see what happens with them. So this wound up being a much longer video than I intended. I wanted to have this be about half this length, but I had a lot to say about some of these teams. So that's why I was like, we got to go rapid fire towards the end here because I don't want to spend too much time. But speaking of spend time, Trevor spent some time last night after I was already in bed. And he covered the Chet Holmgren news. So check that out on the screen right now as a clickable video. Before you go, subscribe if you're new, and we'll see you next time.